Hi everybody, it's Geordie from Geordie's Cards. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sharing this little card where I show you how to stretch some of your supplies. So I've actually made this with a Halloween die, believe it or not. So what I've used today is this Hello Bluebird Forest Fawns set. I think this one is just gorgeous. I've used the Hello Bluebird Forest Friends just for the sentiment. I then took the Hello Bluebird Spooky Scene die and parts of the Pond Builder, which have this kind of like leafy part to it. So what I've done is I've cut out that Spooky Scene die from some Bristol Smooth cardstock. And what happens when you cut that die out is it creates lots of pieces. It's like a puzzle and all the pieces come out. So I've taken the bottom piece, which is going to act as my ground, and I'm just covering that in some distressing. So today I am using Mowed lawn. So I'm adding a layer of Mowed lawn all over it, and then I'm going to add some Lucky Clover to it. I also have cut out a few of these kind of leafy canopy type pieces for which I used the Pond Builder die set. This die set has these kind of little leafy parts, as I say, which can either be used as bushes or as, I'm going to use them today as a canopy for my tree. So that's what I decided to do. The great thing about these kind of leafy dies is that they don't cut any kind of edges or borders or anything. They literally just cut the leaf shape, so you can make them as big or as small as you want. So I have cut mine, and I know they all look rather odd and kind of strange shapes, but it will work. I'll show you as we go along that it will come together quite nicely. So as I said, I've covered everything in a layer of Mowed lawn distress ink, and now I'm taking some Lucky Clover, which is kind of more of a bluish green. The Mowed lawn is quite a nice yellowish green, but I really like the contrast that this gives. And I think it's really, it gives a really nice kind of fresh green look when they're combined together. So that's why I've chosen these colours today. And I'm just using a very small blender brush to add some of this darker darker Lucky Clover Distress Oxide onto these pieces. So what I've done is I've added a touch to the very top of my ground piece, and then some to the bottoms of my canopy leaf pieces. And this is just going to give a nice bit of contrast, and it will look really good when it's all layered together, or at least I think it looks good when it's layered together. So I'm just doing every piece, and once I have done that, I will do some splattering. I'm not going crazy with the splatter detail today. I'm keeping it fairly low-key, which I know is quite unusual for me. But all I did was, with all that excess ink that's left on my make art station, I'm going to squirt that with some water, pick it up with a paintbrush, and then splatter it all over every part of these pieces. And yeah, like I say, it's quite low-key today. You could definitely add some white in as well. I often like to do that, but today I just kept it quite simple and just went in with the green. So tapping that all over, making sure I get some nice texture and dot detail and splat detail on there. I'm very happy with how they turned out, and now it's time to do my trees. Now initially I did cut these also from Bristol Smooth cardstock, but I decided to recut them, and I ran my die through again using some Lawn Fawn white wood grain cardstock. And I really liked this because it's got a nice wood grain texture to it, which looks really good as my trees. So obviously I haven't used any of the other pieces. I've just used this tree part, and I have kept the frame as well, which I'm going to use. So the frame is cut from this white wood grain cardstock as well. But I just really like the texture and detail that using this wood grain cardstock gave to my trees, and hopefully you can see it there. I'm doing exactly the same thing again, squirting the excess ink with my water and then just tapping that all over, just to add again a little bit more texture and detail. And once I'm happy with all of that, I will set those pieces aside to dry. And then I've taken another piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock, which I've cut to 5.5 by 4.25 inches. And this is going to be my background. And so I'm using some Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink. I am going very heavy-handed with this. It's a very pale blue. I love it, absolutely love it. But I definitely wanted it to kind of show up as blue. So I'm adding quite a few layers on here, as I say, being quite heavy-handed. And the great thing about Distress Oxide is actually the more that you add, the easier it becomes to blend. It kind of glides over itself on the paper, and I really like the way it looks. You can see I'm adding quite a heavy layer on there, and then it will just blend out nicely with my blender brush. And that's my background completed. Now it's on to colouring. So I've stamped out my images. I'm just using 5 little images from the set. So I've got this gorgeous little deer who is sitting on the ground and facing to his left. And I'm colouring him in with E50 and E51 on his little face and tail. And then I'll bring in some of the darker E50 markers. So E57, E55, E53, and I will use the E51 again. Quite a few colours, I know, but I really like, I've really been enjoying creating images that have this kind of high contrast between the darker areas and the lighter areas. I kind of feel like it gives it more depth and dimension, and yeah, I don't know, I've really been enjoying it lately. Sometimes I only use 2 colours on my images, but yeah, today I've kind of gone to town and used 4 colours for this little guy. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. So as always, I laid in my darkest colour first to create my shadows and shade. I'm kind of working in sections because he is quite a big image and quite detailed, with all the little curves and places that are kind of overshadowed by other parts of his body. So I did want to kind of take my time with it, and then I'll move on to his head afterwards, that I'm doing here, and figuring out where I'm going to put my shadow for his head, and then blend out again. But these images are just beautiful. I do love Hello Bluebird images. They're very, very sweet and whimsical, and they have a really nice feel to them. This set really reminds me of a childhood favourite, and I think I'm probably going to reveal my age a little bit here, but I absolutely loved Bambi when I was young. Absolutely loved it. And my grandmother, actually, she was an amazing sewer. She made me a puppet, a thumper puppet, which is obviously the little bunny rabbit. And I absolutely loved it. And this set really reminds me of Bambi. And I don't know if you know the movie at all, but there is a scene in Bambi where the little butterfly comes and lands on Bambi's tail. And this really reminded me of that. And I really liked it. So that was just a bit of a happy memory. So I'm kind of creating this scene with that in mind, I suppose you could say. So I just had to search Bambi there to figure out when it was released. It was actually released in 1942. I had no idea it was so old. I'm not quite that old, but obviously it was still popular when I was young, and it was, I guess it's a classic movie, and it is just a gorgeous movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend watching it. It might bring a tear to your eyes though, so make sure you have a box of tissues with you. But yeah, I'm not quite that old, but probably approaching it. So anyway, this is kind of what gave me the inspiration for my colouring today. I wanted it to look a little bit like Bambi and Thumper in the forest with the butterflies. And the only thing that's missing is the little skunk, whose name I can't remember. I think it might have been Petal or something like that. There was a little skunk in the movie as well. But anyway, it's a really, really sweet movie. Definitely recommend it. So just finishing off with my little deer, and I'm using E59 to add to the dots and to his hooves. And then I'm using my R20 marker to add a little bit of blush and a little bit of colour to the inside of his cheek there. Inside of his ear. And then it will be on to my little bunny rabbit. And for him, I'm going to use some warm grey markers, W3, W1 and W0. I like these markers for my little bunny rabbits. They're very, very cute. And I also like to use my E30 markers. I'm thinking, I haven't got my marker pad, but the really pale brown colours as well. I always like to use E50s, it might be. E50, 51 and 53 actually, I think, which are the colours that I used on the deer. So I didn't want to repeat those same colours, so I decided to use the greys instead for my little bunny rabbit. And he is very, very cute. So just as always, laid in my darkest marker for the shadows, blended out towards lightest. So once I've laid one kind of layer down with my Copics, I will go back and add a second layer, just because I like the way it looks. I like the fact that it kind of helps to smooth out the blends, and yeah, I think it just kind of cleans it up a little bit, if that makes sense. This image is not too large, so I've only used the 3 markers on it. But I think it looks really nice, and I like that little bit of added shadow. For his tail, I'm using W0, and then I'm going to go in with my W3 and add some dot detail with that, just to make it look a little bit fluffy, I suppose. And then I'll go in with my R20 and add that to the inside of his cheek and inside of his ear and his cheek and nose. So once that's done, I'm going to go back to my little deer, and I went outside the line a little bit. So I'm going to take my colourless blender and I'm going to push that colour back through the paper. This is a technique that I like to use, and when I say push, that's pretty much what I mean. So what happens when you use alcohol markers is that the colour sinks into the paper, the ink sinks into the paper. And so if you make a mistake like that and use the colourless blender and just kind of dab it on top of the mistake that you've made, it will push that ink right through to the back of the paper, and you'll be left with no colour on the front. I hope that makes sense, but that's just kind of a little technique that I use. For my little bird, I'm using BG10, 11 and 13. I'm creating a little bluebird. I've never seen a bluebird in real life, so I have no idea what they look like, but that's kind of what I'm going for. Anyway, I think he looks kind of sweet. And again, with the R20, I'm just adding a little cheek to him. He's very, very tiny. And I just filled in his beak, which is very small, so you can't really see much of it, but I just wanted to add a little bit of colour. For my butterflies, I'm using E55 for the kind of centres of them, and then I'm going to use 2 different colour combinations for their wings. So for this one, I'm using RV52 and RV55. These are some of my favourite pink colour combinations. They're kind of like sugar candy floss type pink, and that's my opinion anyway. I really like them. And for my other little butterfly, I'm using BV31 and BV34. Again, some of my very favourite kind of purpley kind of colours. They're more of a dusky purple, but I really, really like them. And then that's it for the Copic markers. I will, as always, go in with my white Jelly Roll pen and add some highlight details. Again, this is another step that I like to do with all of my images. Just add a little bit more something, I suppose. A little bit of texture and detail, and it kind of just, I don't know, brings them to life a little bit more, in my opinion. Just something that I like to do. Once that is all done, I do have the coordinating dies for this set. So I will go ahead and cut those out with my die cutting machine. And although most of the time I do fussy cut, it is nice to use dies every now and then and save yourself some hassle. And once that's done, I've gone ahead and stamped out my sentiment, which says, "Hello, sweet friend." I've used Lawn Fawn Fish Tank ink to stamp the sentiment, so it's a nice blue colour. Works nicely with that background. And now I am using some foam tape on the back of this frame. So this frame, again, I die cut from the white wood grain cardstock from Fawn. And I've used some foam tape, and I'm going to take the background panel and attach it to that frame. I just find it easier to do it that way. This frame is quite thin, so it moves around quite easily. So I just found it easier to bring the background to the frame. Now I'm going to attach everything down with my liquid glue. So I've got my Barely Art Precision Glue. This stuff, I've said it before, but has been a game changer for me. I highly recommend it, and I will definitely be buying more. Attaching that down to the base, and I'm just putting everything flat on top of this. So the frame is raised, but everything else will be flat to the back of the card. So before I attach anything else down, I want to kind of layer everything up to see how it's all going to work together. So you'll see what I mean by the fact that although these are all cut from funny shapes, I just kind of used scraps of cardstock and bits that I had left over from the background that I wasn't going to use. So they're all kind of strange shapes, but they work together to create that kind of layered effect for the canopy. So the two front pieces do have a kind of corner edge to them. But the other pieces are kind of odd shaped. So I'm going to take this piece that's kind of straight edged and just kind of attach that down. I'm just eyeballing this one. I kind of figured out where it needed to go, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball where it needs to go. I knew I needed kind of a couple of millimeters between it and the frame at the top. So just making sure I'm happy with that, and I will just pull it down slightly more just to have it peeking through a little bit more. For this other piece, which is this kind of strange curved shape, which I just cut, as I say, from some scrap paper, I'm actually going to get it into the right spot. I'm going to fiddle around with it for a little bit, use my tweezers. And once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to take a pencil and mark a line around the edge of it with the pencil so that I know exactly where to put it down. Now you won't see this pencil line at all because it will be covered by the rest of the canopy, so I don't need to worry about it being seen. It's just to help me guide me to where I need it to go, because it is, it's a strange shape and I want it all to be covered up. I just want it to look like a layer of canopy underneath. I always like to use scraps wherever possible, just because I don't like to waste anything. I like to kind of use as much as I can. For the other two pieces that are going to go on the front, they literally just slip into the corners. They've been cut purposefully so that they fit into the corners. So it looks like my trees are extending out beyond the scene on my card, and that my scene carries on outside of this frame, if that makes sense. So once those canopy pieces are stuck down, it's then time to attach my trees. And these trees will fit in like little puzzle pieces. You'll see at the bottom, there's those little kind of bits that will fit into the ground piece. And they'll just sit in there nicely and create the kind of edge of my scene. And you can see how, despite the fact that this is a Halloween set and they are meant to be spooky trees, and you could see how they could be spooky trees if they didn't have any leaves on them and they were kind of done in a darker colour. But they work really, really well for this kind of summertime scene as well. So it just kind of stretches your supplies. Hello Bluebird do some amazing background dies and background stamps for that matter. I don't have a huge selection of them, but I did have this Halloween one, and I just thought I could repurpose it and add some canopy to it, and it would make it look like a summer scene. So that's exactly what I did. So now I'm just popping all of my images in. So I've got my little deer to the left, my little bunny to the right. My little bird is going to sit on that branch, and that's the perfect little perch for him. Then I've got my larger butterfly. He's going to kind of sit in between the bird and the bunny, and my other little pink butterfly is going to be hovering just above my little deer's tail. And there we go, that's it. So I've gone ahead and stamped out another sentiment which says, "So very fond of you," and another little deer from that same Forest Fawns stamp set. Into the inside of my standard size card base. This is 5.5 by 4.25. And then I'm just gluing down my front panel onto my card base with some liquid glue. And that's it, card complete. So I hope you enjoyed this one today. I really had a lot of fun making it. I love doing all the ink blending and the colouring. and I just think it's a really, really sweet little card. Please do leave a comment, let me know what you thought of it. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and please do subscribe to my channel. I'd love to see you come back again. I've left a link to another video here that you may enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care. Bye.